I hear it's Dead Week, so thank you all for being here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Angaza, maybe start with my story and then go into the company, but definitely leave the majority of the time for Q&A. So as I talk in the beginning, think of any questions that you might have for me, because I definitely want to make this conversation mostly about what you're interested in. A little bit about me. Thank you for the wonderful intro. I was an undergrad here at Stanford almost 10 years ago. Crazy how time flies. I actually had a class in this very room, so it's great to be back. Angaza, in its very early days, was actually born out of the design school. There's a class some of you may be aware of called Extreme Affordability, which is really focused on using the human-centered design process to design products or services for emerging markets, where a lot of the design constraints are very different than if you were to design products for the US or European market. So that was really the initial inspiration for Angaza. We definitely went through a lot of business model iterations to get where we are today, as is startup life. But it's kind of a fun concept to know that our roots were really from Stanford. So let me give you just a brief overview of what we do, and then I want to show you a short video which can explain it a lot better than I can. But we are focused on making energy affordable for off-grid consumers around the world. So this is a very typical image that you will see in off-grid Africa or off-grid India. Most off-grid families light their homes at night by burning kerosene. They don't have access to the power grid, so basically kerosene is really the only option for a light source. And it sucks in a lot of different ways. Kerosene is extremely dim. It's very toxic to the health, so the World Bank estimates that using kerosene every night is equivalent to smoking 2 packs of cigarettes every day. Sorry, it's on this timer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Maybe that'll stop it.
And it's extremely expensive. So a typical off-grid family, at least in East Africa, will actually spend up to 20% of their income just to buy kerosene. So they're literally burning their hard-earned income on this really inferior light source. The other thing that kerosene doesn't do is charge cell phones or power radios. And a lot of off-grid families have cell phones and radios, and they have to pay, on top of what they're already paying for kerosene, they have to pay for a cell phone charge or for disposable batteries for their radio. So overall, off-grid consumers are actually paying the most for inferior energy sources. And we wanted to change that. We wanted to make high-quality, clean, reliable solar energy actually financially accessible to this off-grid consumer base. How do we do that? Essentially, you can go, yeah, perfect. So let me explain a concept called a solar home system. I'll actually pass this around. So a typical solar home system, these are products designed for off-grid consumers. They consist of a small sort of micro solar panel. This is a 6-watt panel. They typically come with multiple overhead LED lights. And then there's some sort of battery box, which can also charge cell phones. So this is one of the most popular products that you'll find sold in off-grid markets like East Africa. And it's really designed, like I said, for the needs of an off-grid family. So that's really lighting, cell phone charging. This can even power USB radios. If you know anything about US consumer solar, Sunrun, Solar City, or just any solar panel that you see on a home in the US, those solar panels are very huge. So you might be sort of surprised to think that a family can actually live off of a 6-watt solar panel. And the reason is because this is really sort of basic replacement for kerosene, entry level to the energy needs of an off-grid home. And then over time, as they actually start to get access to more energy, you size up the solar panel and you might be able to then power TVs and refrigerators off of these solar home systems. So going into what Angaza does specifically, we focus on the financing for these systems. So if you look at how much an off-grid family is spending overall, or even on a weekly basis. Let's say a typical East African family might spend $2 per week on kerosene and cell phone charging. It's very rare that an off-grid family will actually have $100 of cash in hand at one time to be able to buy a product like this outright. But if you can actually spread out the cost of a product over time such that they actually pay less on a weekly basis than they're used to spending on kerosene, then you can make it a total no-brainer to allow them to switch from kerosene to solar. So we call this type of technology pay-as-you-go solar. It's exactly what it sounds like. Essentially, we are enabling these families to pay $1.50 per week for solar energy rather than $2 per week that they're used to spending on kerosene. And we do that with technology. So why don't we go ahead and play the video. This is about a 4-minute video, but I think it'll be really helpful for you to see some of the just scenes that we see in off-grid Africa and learn more about how we actually are solving the problem. I think there are many approaches you can take to lifting people out of poverty, but if you solve the energy problem, you solve so many other problems. There are still over 1 billion people around the world that don't have access to grid electricity, which means that they're using basically jet fuel every night to burn for a source of light. Solar is the best form of energy. It's clean, it's more reliable than grid. We were originally designing and manufacturing high-quality solar products, but again and again we were realizing that these products were just prohibitively expensive for the off-grid customers that needed them the most. So we were faced with an option. We could strip out functionality and quality from a product, or we could actually find a way to make these products financially affordable to off-grid consumers. We took a lot of inspiration from the way the mobile industry has grown. In the past 10 years, sub-Saharan Africa went from a state of no connectivity to a state where everyone is connected through their mobile phone. The mobile industry has completely leapfrogged landlines because consumers were able to buy phones at a very cheap price and to buy airtime little by little. We thought, hey, why don't we just do the same thing with solar energy? Let's make solar more affordable in exactly the same way they purchase prepaid airtime. And that's what led us to this innovative pay-as-you-go financing technology. Families are used to spending up to 20% of their income to purchase kerosene. So solar becomes a no-brainer because once you actually finish your solar payments, the product is yours. It's a rent-to-own model. And then solar becomes free energy from the sun. In 2012, we won the Tech Awards for our pay-as-you-go solar products. And we just realized that if we wanted to impact 100 million people, 1 billion people, we needed to transition from a business-to-consumer model to a business-to-business model and focus directly on designing and developing the pay-as-you-go technology platform and then offer the pay-as-you-go software to distributors. And that's how we were going to get these products to off-grid consumers.
The Angaza pay-as-you-go model transformed our business completely. By using the Angaza Activator app, the energy officer registers the customer. After he or she has made the payment, the customer gets a key code from Angaza. For every amount paid, the customer is given an equivalent number of days. Once the days run out, the lamp automatically goes off. At that point, the client has to make another payment. Through the use of the Gaza Energy Hub, I am able to see the performance of all the energy officers and all the clients. We are all earning more money and accessing more clients. Families that have adopted the solar energy, the money she saves from not buying kerosene, she can use to pay school fees for the kids, and she can use to improve the diet of the family. It's fulfillment to me as an individual that I've made an impact.
I'm super excited to see how this industry has grown in the last only 3 years and where it's going to grow in the next 10 years and 20 years. Pay-as-you-go has completely transformed the off-grid energy industry. There's a whole new market emerging, and it's amazing to see how many jobs have been created from solar distribution. We're growing exponentially. Right now we're working in over 10 countries.
we're really excited to build a truly global technology platform that's really going to solve this need on a global scale.
Cool, thank you. So you saw a little bit about what off-grid life is like. You saw a little bit about the technology that we build at Gaza to help solve this upfront price barrier for solar. I want to break that down a little bit because it was kind of confusing in terms of what all this technology does. Essentially, the first piece of it is you have to think about when a distributor is extending financing to an end consumer who is off-grid. That family or that individual probably doesn't have a bank account, and they probably don't have any sort of credit history with any financial institution. So how does a distributor actually know that they should give that loan to the end consumer? Often they don't. Often they're taking a risk. And the reason that they take this risk, stand a little bit outside. That's better. Okay. The reason that they take this risk is that there's an embedded metering technology inside of these solar home systems. Essentially, it makes it a smart product. So as you saw in the video, when a customer makes a payment, they get a key code, and they type that key code into the product, and that's how the product knows how many days to activate. So a customer might pay for 7 days at a time. They type a key code in for 7 days. Some customers with more buying power might buy 30 days at a time, and the key code that they receive is for 30 days. So basically, if they don't pay, the product doesn't work, and that incentive gets consumers to continue to pay. So that's something that exists in the off-grid solar industry that doesn't exist in microfinance, for example.